And there was a great deal of scepticism, even cynicism about that pledge, given that it was first promised by Bob Carr back in 1998. Now, it's been suggested that rather than helping you in your seat, it actually counted against you. What do you think?
I think you may be right there. There was a lot of cynicism, although I'd have to say to you, Kerry, I welcome that announcement. We all know that is the missing link. We have the Chatswood to Epping link, which is, you know, a terrific piece of infrastructure, and of course, the rest of the line has to be complete. Every Chamber of Commerce in this area, they all come together under the Ryde Business Forum. They have welcomed this and said it's much needed infrastructure. But you are right. I think that given the on-again, off-again nature of transport commitments in this city, we are battling uphill to convince people of the credibility of that commitment.
Now, Kevin Rudd persuaded you to run for this seat in the first place, and I imagine your memories of that night will be etched in your mind for the rest of your life. But you were one of the few who stayed with Kevin Rudd at the end of his Prime Ministership. Do you think that there would have been a different outcome if Kevin Rudd had remained Prime Minister?
I don't know, Kerry, but clearly you cannot have the removal of a Labor leader and a Prime Minister and then 2 months later have an election and not have that play into the outcome. But if I could just give you an idea of what I think has happened nationally, a couple of things. I think our problems actually go back to last year when we never quite claimed victory over the global financial crisis. I think the singular achievement of the government has been the fact that we have a national unemployment rate of 5.3%. Everyone I know has got a job. Everyone in the suburbs around here is working. We kept the nation working. That's an extraordinary achievement, but that was not the central message of our campaign. It should have been built all around jobs. Now, I know that Julia Gillard was talking about jobs all the time, but I have to say the clarity of that did not cut through in the same way as the clarity of the Liberal campaign. And I'll mention one other thing that was a huge factor here in Bennelong that goes to the heart of credibility. When we walked away from the prosecution of the case of the CPRS, that cut through here immediately, and not just among Green voters. People saw it as a core belief issue. They said, well, look, you argued for this. You said it was the most important thing. And if you're going to walk away from that, what else are you going to walk away from? So I have to say the disappointment with the kind of government that we said we would be, I think has been acute.
Any regrets about doing all this, Maxine McHugh?
No, none. Absolutely none, Kerry. No, come on. This is, look, it's, I made a very clear decision. I wanted to play a role in public life. And it was, actually, I'll just correct you on a point of history there. It was my decision to run in Bennelong. And it was, you know my bloke, Bob Hogg, it was Bob's idea. I actually took this idea to Kevin. I said, Kevin, I'm prepared to run in Bennelong if you will back me. So, no, I knew what I was in for, and I just thought it was important to run for a marginal seat. I had easier options before me, I can tell you. But no, it's been a privilege and a joy, and I'm no longer the member, and I'm disappointed about that. Many of my supporters are shattered. But no, I'd do it again tomorrow. I've built up a lot of intense relationships here, and that won't change. I can walk out my door tomorrow in Epping and hold my head high with my neighbours and all the community groups that I've done a lot of work with over the last 3 years.
Maxine McHugh, thank you very much for sharing your candour. For sharing your candour with us at this time.
And they did it with me.
Maxine, thanks very much for talking with us. Thank you.
Thanks, Kerry. Thank you, Kerry. Thanks, Kerry.
Yes, Nick mentioned.
I think the Labor bloodletting has begun. That reminded me of Cheryl Curnow in 1998 when we were sitting here and Cheryl dumped on the Labor Party for putting her in the wrong seat.
Maybe
I think there was a lot of criticism there of the Labor Party, of the dumping of Kevin Rudd, of not pursuing the CPRS. I think you're going to see now that I think it's quite clear Labor will not get a majority of seats tonight, and I think you're going to see a lot of Labor bloodletting. That's just the start of it.
Maybe I'm speaking personally, since Maxine is a former colleague.
sure.
I don't think I'd make a direct comparison with what you were referring to before, to Cheryl Kernow's.
It wasn't quite the dummy spit of Cheryl's, but nevertheless, some very pointed and personal criticism of the Labor Party from me. I feel sorry for her. Being a oncer is a terrible thing in politics, and I credit her for running for a marginal seat, and I think she has been, her career has been destroyed.
And defeating the second most successful Prime Minister in Australian history.
Indeed. And, but her career has been destroyed by the faceless men of the Labor Party in knifing an elected Prime Minister.
Stephen Smith, were you conveniently on your phones then? You must have taken in some of what Maxine said, and she's thought about this.
Well, Maxine is entitled to be disappointed. I mean, she played a significant role in our victory. She's a good person and she was a very good local member, so she's entitled to be disappointed. Firstly. Secondly, I was on the phone trying to make judgments about what's occurring in the West.
Yeah.
You know, and people will ask, well, if Kevin had remained leader, could we have won? Now, obviously, my most direct experience is in the West, and currently we're in the hunt for Swan and Canning and Hasluck. We may fall under in two of those three, but I know that the very strong feedback that I was getting in the West was that if the change had not been made, that tonight I would be talking to you in the following terms, which is, are we holding on to Fremantle as the only seat that Labor will hold in the West, as we did in 1975 and 1977? Such was the way in which the Western Australian community had closed its mind to Kevin.
And what about other parts of Australia?
Exactly.
Well, my own judgment, and clearly the judgment of the caucus, was that yes, there was a closing of the mind. I mean, I think the thing which caused real difficulty for Kevin was the way in which the decision to defer implementation of emissions trading was presented. I think that was a real blow to his standing, and that in very many respects was the start of the view which became a very strong view in the caucus, that we had to make a change.
But was that a decision that Kevin Rudd made on his own? Or was it a decision that Julia Gillard made with him? There's even a suggestion that it was others who thrust that decision upon him, that he was not leading that decision.
And indeed, that Julia was very much supportive of that, the way that was happening.
You can rerun the campaign if you like, Nick, you know, but we've got a position tonight where you can't find 76 seats, I can't find 76 seats. I'm still trying to find how many seats we've got in the West, so, you know, I'm very happy for you to rerun the campaign with the sloganeering, that's fine. You know, people will ask the question, you know, could Kevin have won? You know, after a lot of thinking about this, my own judgment is no. What Julia at least provided was the opportunity to be a change agent. Now, it may well be that was maximised in the West because of Kevin's deep association with the mining tax. But in the end, I mean, I take my responsibility as a Cabinet Minister for our performance and the judgments that we made. But in the end, the primary responsibility, of course, goes to the leader, whether the leader is Kevin, whether the leader is Julia, whether in Nick's case the leader is Tony or Brendan or Malcolm.
But in that period where it was, you were coming to the view that the government had lost its way or was losing its way, obviously within the cabinet, those closest to Kevin Rudd, those most concerned, those most senior, surely must have been going to him and endeavouring to talk to him. Now, was he just not listening? Why wasn't it possible to have him lead you back to safe ground? Was he not listening?
I think there were really two aspects to it. One was the very dire circumstances that we found ourselves in, firstly, and secondly, and then a lack of confidence that Kevin was able to lead us out of it. I think the dire political circumstances we found ourselves in, plus a lack of confidence that he could do that job, saw the shift occur. But this was not a decision that anyone took lightly. This was, difficult decisions. But my own instinct is that if we had gone to the poll with Kevin as leader, then Nick would be finding his 76 seats.
Okay, and we've actually got Wayne Swan standing by. Wayne, I'll ask you to be patient for a second because Anthony's got something.
We had a problem with the figures being fed to us by Sterling, so I've turned off the comparison of polling booths. That's switched it round, and for the first time tonight, I've got the coalition with more seats than Labor, 73 to 72. So I'll let you talk to Wayne Swan, but I just thought I'd throw that point up now.
Okay, Wayne Swan, I'm not sure whether you heard what Maxine McHugh has had to say. You've heard what Stephen Smith has had to say. Your comments?
I haven't heard what Maxine McHugh has had to say, and I did hear some of what Steve has had to say. But what I do want to do tonight is to pay tribute to the leadership of Julia Gillard, the very strong and inspiring leadership of Julia Gillard in very difficult circumstances.
What Maxine McHugh was saying was that she felt that from her own electors that the going back on the ETS was a very big turning point. She felt that the national campaign was not focused. She thought that Labor had failed to get its message across about what it had achieved with regard to its actions on the global financial crisis.
Well, certainly it's been a very difficult campaign, and you can make a whole range of criticisms. I don't intend to run through those tonight. I'll leave that up to the commentators. But the fact is that we did find ourselves, as Steve Smith was saying, in very difficult circumstances that we've had from the start of the year. The fact that we're still competitive at the moment, I think, is testament to the leadership of Julia Gillard. There's no doubt it's a very close result, and there will be plenty of time for analysis and to run through and rake over all of those issues. But I can't do that tonight.
So how do you explain the vote against Labor in Queensland?
Well, Queensland, Kerry, as you well know, as a Queenslander, is extremely volatile, and all of my political life it has always been a volatile electorate here, particularly in federal elections. The fact is, at the last federal election we won a swag of seats here, and for some time now those seats have been at risk, and what we've seen is some of them have fallen tonight, but not all of them.
Now, the way it's looking, there seems little doubt that you are facing a hung parliament, and the question then comes into play as who is going to be able to form minority government. Anthony Green is just saying to me that from looking at the figures that are available now from the West, for the first time tonight, he's calling 73 seats for the coalition and 72 for Labor. There's also the possibility that you may have a perhaps green-oriented independent in Tasmania in place of one of the Labor seats. Do you have a view on the circumstances that should govern how minority government is formed?
Kerry, I can't speculate about that tonight. I don't know whether that is going to eventuate or not. I think we are just going to have to wait until we see what the figures look like over the next day or two. I think it would be the wrong thing to do to be speculating about that. I don't intend to.
Do you acknowledge that it's virtually impossible now for Labor to form government in its own right?
Well, I think there are a lot of very close seats out there. We've got a lot of postal votes. There's been very big pre-poll. I think we've got to wait a few days until we go through those results. You see, in some of those seats that we won in Queensland in the last federal election, we didn't know the outcome of those seats, the final outcome, in some cases for days and in some cases for weeks. So it's very close. I think it's just too early to come to that conclusion.
Okay, well, Wayne Swan, thanks for making the time. I know it's been a very long campaign for you and no doubt a long day, but thanks for giving us the time.
Thanks very much.
Now, we're just going to cross down to Tony Jones. Just before we do, Anthony, you want to talk about the Senate?
Just very briefly, the Liberals have lost a seat to the Greens, lost a seat in Tasmania, so that's a loss. They'll lose a seat.
Sorry, Labor has lost.
Coalition has lost.
This is the Senate we're talking about.
Senate. The Liberals have lost a Senate seat in Tasmania, and they'll lose a Senate seat in Queensland, which means that even if they form government, there will be some difficulty. But it looks like the Greens have taken a seat off Labor in Victoria, South Australia, and New South Wales and Stephen Fielding has been defeated in Victoria.
So what does that do for the makeup of the parliament? Does
Well,
it definitely deliver the balance of power to the Greens?
The Greens were always going to get the balance of power in this Senate, but it does mean if the coalition does win, the Greens will still have the balance of power.
But
in
we
the
now
Senate.
have this strange situation where the old Senate will sit there for another 11 months.
But it does look like the Liberals will hold the seat in the ACT because the vote has
Yeah.
hovered around 33.
Kerry, I'd just point out quickly with around